Good evening, Indigo Children Radio listeners, and welcome back to tonight's show. Tonight we have a special guest with us and someone I've been very much looking forward to doing an interview with, NickDutch, professional tarot reader and experimental occultist. He's also the author of two books, TransDeism and Divination and Astral Projection, Sceptical Occultism. You can find them on Amazon.com. Once again, look them up, Amazon.com, TransDeism and Divination, and Astral Projection, Sceptical Occultism. Website for Mr. NickDutch is NickDutch, that's D-U-T-C-H, .co.uk. Check him out there. That's his website. And if you're on YouTube, the two channels you're looking for is NickDutch Tarot and Bespoke Group UK. Bespoke Group UK YouTube channels. NickDutch, thank you for joining us tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderfully. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for doing us the honor. I've personally followed your YouTube channel, Bespoke Group UK, and enjoyed your take on magic, the mind, spirituality. I am enthusiastic about what you do and what you have to say to us tonight. I wondered if we could trouble you to give us a little bit of background on why you kind of went down this path. You've experienced some things, we know. Was it the experience that led you to experiment more?
I just wanted answers, and I don't think that you can always get the answers that you're after. I mean, if we were to rewind back through my life, I mean, the very first experience I had, I guess I was about 3 or 4 years old at the time. And at that age, you know, you need to have somebody to tell you what a telephone is. You need to have someone to tell you what a bus is or a train. And it was just before bedtime, and I said to my mother, last night I saw this strange thing, and I described it to her. And she said, maybe it was a ghost. And I said, well, what is a ghost? And that was the interesting thing, because I'd had the experience of seeing this lady that was translucent. I could see straight through her. And she was wearing this old-fashioned Victorian dress with a bustle and everything, appearing at one part of the room, disappearing at the next part of the room. And I didn't know what a ghost was. Now, I hadn't even watched Scooby-Doo by that age. All right? So I had no experience of the subjects of the afterlife or spirituality or any of those things, but yet I had this experience. And that basically started me on a train of thought. And that was corroborated by certain other experiences, and all these things acted as motivation to make me want to try and find out more. I carried on coming across lots of dead ends, but I guess I just carried on being a seeker for the truth.
Interesting. And what was your mother's response here? Typically in America, the typical response is to brush the children's notions off. It isn't real. It's in your head. You're a child, and we expect this sort of thing from you.
Well, absolutely. I mean, my mother was and is still a very hard atheist, has no conceptualization of the afterlife or anything like that, regards it all as being hooey. But on the other hand, you know, she had this kid who had this strange experience. So essentially, you know, it was a rather difficult dynamic between the two of us. But, you know, the whole role of the parents, according to her, is to try and take the child through education so they don't actually have any of these daft and superstitious ideas. And, you know, went through school, did okay. My parents says, no, you're not going to become a professional tarot reader, you're going to go to university. And so I went to university, and I did sociology and psychology initially. And after that, tried a few other jobs, also studied comparative science and neurology and natural science on the Open University. I then did a couple of years studying of accountancy, and I've also done courses in counseling, theory and practice as well. So I managed to gain quite a lot of education, and hey presto, I'm a professional tarot reader, which goes completely contrary to the expectations of my parents as a result of education. So, you know, being educated will certainly not stop you from having a curiosity about the things you experience on quite a regular basis.
I think that's an excellent point. What I've really enjoyed about your YouTube channel and when you talk about these things is even though you've had these experiences, your intelligence and your intellect has not gone up for sale in any way whatsoever. You've still taken the scientific and pragmatic approach as it comes to your self-awareness, your self-studies, and finding out what works and what doesn't. What do you feel is the crux of magical experience or esoterica at large? Is it direct experience of results of what you're doing, or what's your opinion of this?
Well, my opinion is that all of these things provide even more questions. I mean, it's just like when I went to university during my first year, I went there with the attitude of, hey, I'm intelligent, I know everything, I'm going to be fine. You then spend 3 years studying and you like stay up late at night drinking strong coffee, trying to cram your head full of as many books as you can. And at the end of it, you realize you know nothing. And that's just the same as when you're exploring the occult. You know, you have a series of strange experiences. Some part of you says, am I getting closer to the truth? And maybe you are, but on the other hand, because there's so many different possibilities, it raises even more questions. So you eventually reach this stage of thinking that something is happening, but you know we can't ever get a handle on precisely what it is. Now, in my case, I go for the search strange experience, and by the strange experience, I mean seeing a ghost, having a prophetic dream about the future, experiencing what is apparently or seems to be spiritual healing energy or whatever. But the fact of the matter is we still have these experiences and they raise more questions. So the basic crux of the matter, to answer your question, is that there's lots of things that we don't know. And there's tons, and I mean tons, of fantastic, beautiful, sometimes scary experiences that you can have out there, which are associated with all of these strange things.
What's your opinion of what popular culture has called the New Age movement, the Age of Aquarius? You know, people are waking up and all this stuff. What do you feel like there's any danger with the massive amounts of information that seems rather dogmatic, that's taking young teen minds and turning them into Wiccan witches overnight? Or is this a positive thing, or is it a negative thing that it seems like it's in the forefront of society to kind of go against the crystalline religion of our parents and grandparents and enter in this new world without the experimentation? Are we doing a good thing with all these products on the shelves these days, or no?
I don't think that we can actually say that something like the Wiccan religion is in fact the New Age. I think these things are distinctly different. When we look at these modern day allegedly New Age religions, which yes we can call roughly, it's still part of the New Age movement because it all came out of the 1950s and from then onwards, they are still dogmatic faiths. They still have their preachers, they still have their priests, they still have individuals that they revere in a very in a similar manner to the way a Christian might revere a saint, and there's still the same mind control cult mentality, which comes as a direct result of the mass broadcast of different forms of information. This is good in a certain way because it provides people with a broader vision of ideas that they can select from. So maybe they'll take some practices from, I don't know, chaos magic and some from Wicca itself and all the rest of that. But essentially, if you were to remove all the cults, you would end up with a non-dogmatic spiritual interpretation of something which has evolved out of Christianity, basically, rather than anything else. All right, because we also have a problem with the economy, because the economy encourages people to just earn money and to basically hang the morality. And so there are people in this world who are literally damaging people because either they want to and they get a bit of a sadistic kick out of it, or because they just want to earn money and they don't care how many minds they screw up. So that's why there's both positives and negatives, and you have to approach this mass of seething ideas, all of which are trying to get your attention, with a certain level of skeptical thinking, a certain level of objectivity, and to be very strong in your own reasoning capacity. And now the danger is the fact that our educational systems do not actually arm us for this. All right? And there is no seriously rational interpretations, or not many rational interpretations, of all of these various different cultures and religions which are out there. And so the people aren't prepared for it, and they need to have new memes or new ideas about the experiences and about the cultures and about the religions to be able to protect themselves.
What do you feel would be the most important thoughts somebody who's looking for change. They're looking for a way to empower themselves. They don't want to be a victim. They're tired of relying on the conveyor belt of life, and they decide to venture to the bookstore or consult with someone, such as yourself in your professional capacity. What is the mindset you believe a good student should be in when they decide to go down the occult path?
I think the first thing you need to be aware of is that information is a business. Okay, there are some people who will try and terrify you into believing that their source of information is correct. Now, you see that all the time on certain TV channels on Sunday morning. You've got your scary evangelical preacher out there trying to say, if you don't do it my way, then either the devil will get you or you'll go to hell. Now, this is pure fear tactics, but you also venture into the New Age movement, and you have a look at the Aquarian section or the self-development, personal development sections there, and there will be people saying very similar things about different forms of religiosity, suggesting that they are the one who is the true initiate, or they are, the genuine witch and the rest of that, and therefore everything they say is totally reliable. So you have to look at this stuff as if these are people who are running a business. They want to earn money. They want to make sure that you're buying the book from them, you're following everything that they're about, and they're not necessarily encouraging you to be skeptical and indeed to be critical either of experiences or of spirituality. I certainly have nothing against anyone developing any kind of spirituality, whether it's Christian, pagan, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, anything like that, or indeed, even a ufology type based religion, if that's what makes them feel good, if that's what really, replaces something inside them and makes them, feel full of empowerment and strength. But also think carefully about the words that people are using and the effect that those words are having upon them.
Do you think it's rather overwhelming when somebody who wants to get on this self-transformation pathway, when they see like Goetia, Abrahamic magic, the Kabbalah, Wiccan, and then you realize there's chaos magicians, and then there's techno shamanism and things like that? What is your answer to when people say, well, what's the most powerful, what's the most effective magical discipline out there?
They are all different denominations of the same thing. There will always be someone who will say, this one is most powerful, that one is most powerful. Basically, I regard that as a heap of rubbish. I regard that as a information business line, which is being used to try and keep people into one particular denomination, which is, of course, ridiculous. I mean, people are just people. They've got the needs that, every other person has. Everyone has loves and hates and hopes and dreams and aspirations, and they understand that they have to survive in life. So essentially, why on earth are we trying to exclude people? Now, you can go to a modern-day pagan gathering, and you'll find that there's maybe the Thelemites want to beat up the Wiccans, or want to beat up maybe the Gardnerian sect, or who will hate on the Chaos Magicians. And what is the point in all this? It's just because there is this growth of sectarianism, and some people will want to try and control you to bring you into one particular sect and hold you there because it does them some good. Try your hardest not to think like that, because it doesn't necessarily help you. It's not very good emotionally. And also, when you start to build up an identity, let's say in this techno-shamanism or maybe a ufology faith or magical system, okay, then, let's say you have a need to move away from that and to change because you've reached a time in your life when you feel the need to do that. You may go through a serious identity crisis. So essentially, why not throw all those systems away, or indeed just pick and choose as you go, thinking, okay, well, that bit's interesting, maybe I could build my spirituality upon that and choose to discard it if I wish.
What do you think of the thought process? Like, there's the person that approaches these different groups, these different disciplines, and do you feel there's any difference in the outcome of experimental magic when someone says, well, let's say I choose to be a Thelemite or a chaos magician or follow some Norse pantheon? Is there just as much power in the end result, in your opinion, as someone who says, oh no, Odin brought me these things, or the chaos magician that says I did this myself?
Those are their interpretations as to how the world works. The bottom line is, we will never know. Okay, we will simply never know. I could have an experience today which will appear to have been brought about by me buying some black candles and setting them up on an altar space and, I don't know, an inverted crucifix plus a chaos sphere plus maybe a Wiccan pentagram, muttering words that I've got from Transcendental Magic or maybe one of Crowley's books, and hey presto, some strange experience could occur. But I will personally never know whether it was me doing it, an external force, or whether it was done by a higher power, or whatever. The fact of the matter is, strange experiences only ever prove that a strange experience can occur. And it certainly does not explain in any way how that experience occurred, why it occurred, what it points out to about the universe. It just points out the fact there was a strange experience there. Now, if someone wants to go around saying, Odin brought me this, that's a faith-based position. Okay, that's a religious position, and it's therefore not scientific. Now, when I was going through learning about magic in the early days, I was surrounded by people who would always say, magic is the art and science of causing change to occur in conformity with the will. Where did they get that definition from? They got it from Aleister Crowley's Magic in Theory and Practice. But what they neglect to point out is that that definition was only for the physical world, because Aleister Crowley used that word in two separate ways. Number one, the change in accordance with your will, and number two, the magic of tradition. You see, there he uses two separate phrases. Okay, magic, making chloride of gold, for instance, or trying to heal your body through changing your diet. He mentions this in that section. Then he goes on to talk about the magic of tradition. And the magic of tradition, that involves all of the religious experiences and the strange varieties of religious experiences that we as occultists put ourselves through. But essentially, what these things prove still remain unknown. And even in Crowley's writings, if you look carefully, you can still see a reflection on the fact that he thought that some of these things could be happening purely because of things occurring in the mind. But what they were, he did not know.
Do you feel like there's any benefit or gain from it seems like it's only a matter of time when a student decides to go into the occult practices for empowerment or self-transformation, and then you start to realize, like you had said before, the Thelemites want to beat up the Wiccans and the Chaos guys, want to beat up everybody. If it was, like that, is there any benefit or gain to the people that say, no, I'm a left-hand path, or I'm a right-hand path, the left hand being, associated with dark, egocentric motivations, or the right-hand path, silk robes and running through gardens in the middle of the day and love and light to everybody? Is there a benefit to either of these disciplines for the practitioner inherently?
In reality, I can't see a difference between the two. I mean, quite simply, these people who say I'm following the dark path, they may, dress up in a way, or they may have had a history of drugs or whatever it was that gave them a buzz at the time and made them feel they were being somehow dark or evil or rebellious. But in practice, you see them doing their actions, and you compare that with someone doing their actions in a allegedly white witchcraft or white magic or white whatever it is way, you just see strong similarities. Now, I was following this guy who was a theistic Satanist on YouTube, just out of curiosity to see basically what he was saying. And he was talking about the generation of religious experience with his satanic deity. And I thought to myself as I sat there listening, if you just changed the word Satan to the word Jesus or to the word God, basically you've just got Judeo-Christian mysticism. Okay, there was no sort of worship of hatred or anger. He was just talking about lying down in a garden with a gentle breeze on his face and just feeling that in a moment of reverent worship for his higher power concept. And I thought to myself, I saw a Christian video on YouTube as well of someone saying something very similar. So essentially, in practice, apart from some of the imagery, the jewelry, some of the key buzzwords, maybe the makeup, what in reality is the difference? Maybe there's a different emotional impact that one would have over the other, taking into account the individual's mentality, and this does change taking into account the mentality of the individual, okay? Maybe that's all there is to it, but it does just seem like different routes to the same thing. Now, as far as the idea of the dark magic magician, I did this because it was my will. I was the one who did this. How do they know? Once again, you've got a faith-based position. It's a religious statement, and it's not a scientific fact.
What about it seems like, studying the books and all this is all fun and games until people start to have the lucid dreams, the vision, and the astral projection. Giving us just kind of like an overview without, too much detail or giving anything away. What has your studies in astral projection come to show you about either the self as a whole or magic as in the occult for the person?
Well, that's not necessarily a small question,
No,
really,
it's,
is it? Because the ramifications of the experiences when you have them, they could be vast. But essentially, and this is something I carry on saying, and I'm trying to drum it into people to try and get them to understand, because there are so many strange experiences which can happen, but a strange experience definitely proves one thing. And that is that you can have a strange experience, okay? Now, that could be an experience with a ghost or a spirit or a demon or an astral projection or dream telepathy with somebody. That's actually fascinating when that happens. And two people in different cities can share the same dream and then talk about it the next day over coffee when they meet up, okay? These things show that maybe we're not separate. They show something, all right? But the more you look into it, the more you suddenly realize that, oh my God, I don't know. I mean, the whole sort of like parental attitude of, no, you didn't have that experience, you're deluding yourself, that's bullshit. The fact of the matter is the experience happens, okay? And maybe there is something about the process of doing your meditations, doing your creative visualizations, the whole mind-altering atmosphere of being in a room full of like incense and candles and a Kabbalistic prayer book on your altar and all the rest of that kind of stuff does something to you on a very deep psychological level. And maybe that can open you up somehow, give you a gamma brainwave frequency. It's difficult to say, but it enables the strange experience to happen. Now, as far as what it means about the self, if I was to be really, really, really pushed really hard, okay, I would probably say something which sounds totally insane. But that one thing would be that we're probably like little brain cells in the head of one massive being. All of us higher consciousness animals may in fact be somehow interconnected. Now, I can't prove it. And so therefore I'm not going to turn around to you and state that is the fact. All right, it would make no sense for me to do that at all. That would just be another faith-based position. But what I could do is say, look into this stuff, try it, practice it. It doesn't matter whether you get an effect straight away. It took me 2 whole years of practice to have my first full-blown astral projection, okay? But when it happened, that was a seriously life-changing, mind-changing, altering experience because it shows things can happen. And I started doing more sharing dreams with people. Oh, it was fantastic. I walked through walls. It was mind-blowing. These things, they happen, okay? But again, what does it mean? There's too many questions. It really would make me feel that maybe there is a God and we are all it. It's not a question of one person suddenly saying, oh, I am superior because I have reached Godhead and I have opened the crown chakra. Well, believe for you, but it doesn't mean to say you're any more superior than I am, and I'm just a guy who's pushing 40 with bad dentistry, for crying out loud sake. The fact of the matter is, there's experiences to be had. People do make the mistake of trying their hardest to turn their strange experiences into the foundation of a religion. And I think that that's dangerous. They get dogmatic about it. They say you can only do it under these circumstances. No, you must do it my way. I am the one who has all the knowledge and power, and you are a mere mortal. Well, people who are like that, they can just go away, quite frankly. I'm tempted to use a ruder word there, but I'll try my hardest not to.
Sure. No, by all means.
Because, the bottom line is these are not good people because they're trying to brainwash you because it makes them feel good. It gives them that ego rush. It gives them that moment of thinking, okay, I may have only got like 1% in my physics exam when I was in secondary school, but hey, presto, now I'm superior to that guy over there. Or I can make that person feel terrible because I can terrify them with my strange experiences and my power. You know, this is mental. This is seriously disturbed behavior, and there's too much of it out there.
I couldn't agree more. I didn't know you're probably familiar with this author Robert Bruce's book, How to Master Astral Projection in 90 Days. And I can tell you it's been well over 90 days for myself. Well, I mean, we're probably on the much higher side than 24 months, and the information seems to be good, but a lot of these individuals seem to postulate very extreme ideas of what the out-of-body experience is, and this is a very, very hot topic in the year 2012, or at least from my personal experience, early 2000s, when it really seemed like people were questioning this. It seemed like people were having these experiences, and they crank out these books, and it's a massive, massive book. But whether or not it's helping people achieve this state of mind in 90 days, it's it's really beyond me to understand, because there are some people, it seems that they're very gifted at it. They do it quickly. And then there are those of us that are trying. Now I've had astral projections that I recall later on in the waking day, but it seems to happen when I'm asleep. What has been your experience with the astral projection in terms of the way your mind perceives the world around you? Is it beyond incredibly real? It's beyond incredibly lucid, very coherent, vibrant colors, or things of that nature?
Well, there are, or appear to be, from personal experience, and that's all I can give you, okay, a number of different levels of awareness or levels of lucidity. You can have a totally lucid experience in which you're completely out of your body. Or you can have one in which you're still partially aware that you're lying down in bed, but also you got this feeling of being somewhere else at the same time. So, and you do that more in meditation rather than in out and out sleep paralysis, body laying on the bed and all that kind of stuff. But there are just different levels. The most weird one I had was when I was actually very ill at the time. I have a history of chronic fatigue syndrome from my youth. And during this particular time, I was very fatigued. And I had hoped that if I did have an astral projection, I would feel totally healthy in the astral body. And no, I didn't. I manifested myself, or appeared on the landing on the upstairs near my bedroom. And I still felt really, really tired. And I looked around me, and everything was just the way it was during the normal day. I could even smell the air and the scent of that room. And see the carpet and the bookcase and everything, but it was all in this strangely bluish yellow light, almost as if there are two color sources being shown simultaneously from the position of your body, one of which is yellow and the other which is blue, but they're not mixing to make green. And so, which is a very strange kind of color coordination type system to have, kind of silvery, bluey, yellowish strangeness. And I was able to eventually get my feet together and able to walk around, and that was weird. And I tried to push myself through a wall, and it felt like my body was made of concentrated steam or something, and I could hear it whistling as I was pushing myself through this wall. The experience was tremendous and very weird, and then all of a sudden there was a bang, I think it was, and my spirit body went straight up to the horizontal, and then whizzed to my bed. But it didn't go straight through the wall. It actually moved around the frame of the door to go in through the door itself very, very quickly, and then snapped back down to the physical body. When you have an experience like that, it is just like, oh my word, but you want to test it. You want to make sure it's real. And so you go and you explore, deliberately influencing somebody's dreams. And that can be very weird, okay? Because that can be very, very, very weird. I mean, I knew this guy in university. I knew he had great potential. He was actually very bright, but a bit neurotic, okay? And he wasn't really doing enough work. I was a lazy student, okay? But he was worse than me. And I thought, oh, Christ. So I thought I'd try an experiment. And I did the experiment whereby I was meditating on him when I was, a combination between like a meditation and an attempt of astral projection in meditation experience. And I chose to create the scene that we were in the dance hall in the college, and I grabbed him by the neck and I was shaking truth into him, saying, you got to work harder. And I completely forgot about that until Christmas, which was 9 months later. And then we were on this long, rather mental pub crawl full of gin and tonic and beer. And he suddenly turns around to me and says, I had this really weird dream when I was in college. I dreamt that you met me in the dance hall. You were shaking me by the shirt and shouting, I got to work harder. And I thought, it's like, these things, they happen, okay? They just happen.
That's awesome. This is the type of stuff that those of us who haven't done it yet, I'm speaking for myself, but I know a lot of other people, this is what we want to do. I mean, it's not that I want to run around, North America or further, just tampering with people's dreams, but then again, you kind of want to. You want to see what's going on. You want to do it, and that account is absolutely fascinating because as a lucid dreamer who doesn't claim that it's a full OBE type of thing, it's just being lucid in the dreams, I attest and I tell people very candidly how real that experience is, to be completely aware in your dreams. And I can only imagine, and that type of stuff has profound implications. And, like you said, it has a profound impact on your mind. Do you have an opinion on this idea that comes from ancient times? It seems like all the masters, no matter what they were talking about, seem to hint frequently at the astral projection or the out-of-body experience, and then, of course, going about your magical work, thereby bypassing the ego mind, we call it, of the daytime. The am I on time? Am I hungry? Am I not? Am I afraid? All of these things. Do you feel in your experimentation that there's any truth or could be maybe some practical use for getting into an out-of-body experience and then going to conduct your ritual magic or your thought magic or whatever the case may be?
I think there must be a bit of a debate as to whether these people were actually having an out-of-body experience or a lucid dream or just a very deep form of meditation. Because I don't think that we can say, I mean, there's so many questions to be asked and there's no answers, but there's people who say there's answers. And that's again, very dangerous because, like, it's just lying to be able to say, like, oh, in those days they actually did go out of their body, meet in a stone circle, conduct a ritual, and then go back home, and as a result of that they managed to change the political landscape of the country. I mean, no way. People have had experiences, they've tried to relate to other people, and it's become an article of faith for some people associated with the New Age world, the pagan world, the witchcraft world, even Christian spiritualism and all the rest, But we essentially don't know. That's why, in my opinion, I think that we should all regard ourselves as experimental occultists, because that takes out all of the dogma, that takes out all of the, I am the great I am. It removes from the situation any presupposition that there is some objective thing which you can reliably 110% of the time do every single time. Now, I can turn on my light switch, okay? So long as we don't have a power cut, I can turn on my light switch. It will work every time. That time, under those circumstances, the physical world, laws of physics, the rest of that, using the phrase "it works" is applicable. But when it comes to something like, oh yeah, I went into my astral body, out-of-body experience, and I did a ritual to bring something about. Do we know we were in our out-of-body experience? No, there may have been an experience which seemed to fulfill that requirement or that definition in accordance with the various folk myths which are out there and the various spiritual definitions which are out there. Okay? That's true. Okay, they would have an experience, or at least they're claiming to have an experience. But did it actually have the effect? Again, too many questions. But yes, you can, in a deep meditation or in something similar, do something which appears to be a pretty effective theatrical ritual or with spiritual effects. Okay, and yes, there's something to that. I wrote something about that in my in a book on lucid dreaming that's probably going to be out pretty soon, actually.
Excellent.
So yes, that's pretty much what what some people can do. But on the other hand, how reliable, how many questions, there's a lot of things to be played around with there.
That's excellent advice, and I'd also like to reiterate to the listeners, how often we ultimately end up going back with people like NickDutch and myself and other people that will impress upon you that it is experimental, and we can't really stress that enough. Otherwise, it's two guys on a radio show, kind of like reinventing the wheel and spinning more dogma, and we don't want you to take that as the meat and bones of this entire conversation, and I think it's excellent that you point that out. Let's talk a little bit about your book, TransDeism and Divination. What is transdeism for people that don't know?
Okay, well, I wanted to try and look out for a name for basically what I was. I mean, people approached me and said, well, are you a Christian? Are you a spiritualist? Are you a chaos magician? Are you a Satanist? I mean, what precisely is it that you're doing? Because people can't quite get a handle on me because I don't fit into the standard definitions. Because I don't see the point in stating that, number one, it works, because I don't know if it works. I have a mass of strange experiences I've had, okay, but on the other hand, can I therefore say to someone who's, let's say they've got a disease and they want to be cured of it, that it works, it can cure you? No, that would be immoral, that would be unethical. And on top of that, it would be factually inaccurate because it's experimental. Now, as far as where I stand, like on a spiritual or a religious point of view, I applied reasoning to my thinking. All right. Now, there's only really one school of thought that applies reason and spirituality together, and that's called deism or deism, depending upon your pronunciation, spelled D-E-I-S-M. And that was one of the religious interpretations of some of the founding fathers of the United States of America. They would believe that maybe God created the universe and then he just sat back on a deck chair and drank tea for the rest of time, maybe. But I don't really care whether there is a God or whether he created the universe or he didn't create the universe. But I use religious ideas as a tool to try and help me to have a strange experience. Okay? So I might do something Christian, I might do something Jewish, I might do something Muslim, I might do something pagan, I might do something Buddhist, because it doesn't really matter. I'm using the words, the symbols, the imagery, and all the rest of that to help me to get into a religious state of mind, basically. Because from that religious state of mind, I can then do weird stuff. And I then search for the strange experiences. So transdeism, transcendental deism, is applying reason to the search for strange experiences and applying reason to the experiences once you've had them. As I've said before, the thing which is real is the strange experience. And the fact of the matter is, in accordance with my personal experience, the strange experiences can happen, do happen, and will happen basically with enough practice. But if you look at your strange experiences and then try and turn that into a religion, say, oh, there was a ghost there or there was a spirit there and therefore they exist in this way, that way, or the other way, that's when you're going down dogmatic religion. And that, as far as I'm concerned, is bad. I mean, I may have seen something which would fill or fulfill the requirements to be a ghost experience in accordance with popular mythology about what a ghost experience is supposed to be about. But there's no proof from that strange experience that there is any form of life after death. There's only proof that that strange experience can occur. All right, that's why I can do spiritualistic stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean to say I'm a spiritualist. Well, it means I'm an experimental occultist.
That's an excellent, excellent way to relate your message, and I'm going to take the part with me about it doesn't necessarily prove that there's life after death, but it just definitely proves that the experience can occur. That is awesome. That's something that I'm probably going to regurgitate later on in these shows. That's an excellent way to put it. Going back to an earlier topic on the occult magic and the practice of ritual magic, do you feel, where do you feel there are people like myself? I practice more of a mental science, more of a mental occult magic as opposed to full-on dress robes and rituals. I have these implements, but I've used them, I think, maybe twice in my entire 5-6 year tenure as someone who claims to be on a path, which, when you say things like that, it's like, oh, I'm separating myself from the rest of you because I'm on a path. But, everyone knows what we're speaking of. Do you feel in your experiments, because I haven't done enough experimenting to know the difference yet, is there a big difference in outcome between the ritual theater play, the getting dressed up, the candles, the lights, for your average user? Or is it just come what may? If you're doing it in your mind, you're doing it in your mind. What are your thoughts on that?
Either way, you're doing it in your mind anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I once had a conversation with a lady way back in the day when I was doing psychic fairs, and she said that there was one particular prayer or ritual that she did which always had a certain effect. And it was the words which really did it. Well, I thought that was interesting because obviously she had invested an awful lot of faith in the power of these words themselves. Mm-hmm. So essentially that was something which had an impact upon her mind. And so I said to her, okay, so let's say someone invented a robot which looked just like you and was just made out of wires and transistors and silicon chips, and it had vocal cords and it could speak and it could light candles and it said those words. Do you seriously really think that you will get the same result, or the same apparent result, I should say, if I'm a good transdeist, as a result of that robot doing your little spell or ritual or whatever you want to call it, as if you're doing it? And that really stumped her because, she was under the impression that it was the power of the words. Now, for someone who's getting involved in like weird, freaky shit for the first time, they're more likely, in my opinion, to buy the crystals, the magic wands, or to get themselves pentacle jewelry and think about making themselves a robe, because that's what all the books tell them to do. And some people will invest a great deal of faith in the fact that they are doing it in accordance with a tradition that was written down by a certain person in 1989 or whenever it was, and therefore it had some kind of power because people seem to respect the authority of someone who's written, which is of course a good thing because I've written stuff, so obviously carry on. Obviously I'm kidding there, because I want people to think for themselves. If they disagree with me, then that's more than fine. I want them to be able to challenge my ideas. It keeps me on my toes. But, when someone does go through the process of buying their black candles and their frankincense, incense, and maybe doing everything to make sure everything follows what they think is the right tradition, that will have a dramatic impact upon them. But in my opinion, the thing that will be creating the problem is that they will be believing in a religious way in the traditions that they have adopted, in the robes, in the magic wand, in the city hat, in the whatever it is. All right, because that will be the thing which has the power, in their opinion, to make it occur. So, yes, there is a certain power there, but on the other hand, if I was to wear a robe and have a magic wand and the rest of it, I might actually feel a bit cringy, okay? I'd rather do things in a manner which suits me.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, for those of you listening, NickDutch.co.uk is his website, our guest tonight. And also, what channel on YouTube did you do? Because I want the listeners to look this up after the show. I want them to go to your YouTube channel and listen to your video on demonology. What in your quest for the strange experience, and those people are going to go there and listen. Was it on the Bespoke Group UK?
That's the one. Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, okay. So listeners, go search YouTube when you can here shortly after the show, or cue it up during, put it on pause. Bespoke Group, BESPOKE Group UK. That's his YouTube channel where he has this excellent video on demonology. And in your quest for the weird and the strange, what are people getting themselves into when they decide to, let's see what the demons are up to?
Well, that's a very interesting question. One thing that I've noticed as a result of being on YouTube is that people do tend to take a very literalistic interpretation of spirits and demons. Now, you can experience all kinds of weird stuff, but there's no proof that any form of spirit or demon actually exists. There are people giving hard truth claims all the time, saying, no, demons are all evil, they will corrupt you, they will drag you to hell, they will torture you, they will do this, that, and the other. Well, the bottom line is, where is your hard and fast objective truth? Well, someone will say, well, the Bible says that. Well, the Bible was written by people. Now, there may be some good stuff in the Bible, but there's also some bad stuff. And for those people who worship the Bible, I personally don't think they have a higher power apart from printed text. So they're encouraged to just follow what someone says or what is printed. You know, they're being programmed. And I personally think that's a very bad way of looking at things. Then you've got people who have adopted another form of religiosity that says that there are some form of evil spirits, and therefore it is either the jinn or whatever it is that you're actually summoning or dealing with. Again, the fact of the matter is, this is just another form of spiritualism. All right, and it's very close to chaos magic. It's very close to forms of sigillation in terms of its nature. It's just done within a certain form of traditional Judeo-Christian-esque religious structure, and it is essentially a form of Christian religion. It's not satanic, although there are satanic, theistic satanic people who have tried to turn it into a form of satanic religion. But that's their personal interpretation or their own personal religion, but it is just a religion. It's just a faith-based statement. I've had experiences with summoning demons. Okay, so what does it prove? It proves the same thing. It proves I can have a strange experience. It doesn't prove the existence of God. It doesn't prove the existence of the devil. All right? Now, I had this other weird experience. I tried to do things the other way. I mean, I was, in fact, what you might call a bit of a disturbed adolescent. I suppose most adolescents are pretty disturbed, and I was one of the worst ones. And I actually tried to do a ritual summoning of the Angel of Death, because there was someone I didn't like, and I really wanted them dead. So, I used a combination of my various spell books and ritual magic books, and I did use robes and candles and magic wands and all the rest of that, and I did use the number squares for the power of Saturn, and I did this thing to summon the Angel of Death. And hey presto, at that time, nothing happened. So I just extinguished all the candles and I went to bed. But during the night, it was rather weird. It just felt like that area where I had the circle up, that felt darker somehow. Okay, it felt really dark there. And then I kind of like felt uneasy inside myself. And I was thinking about all my anger and all that kind of stuff, the way a screwed up adolescent does. And I just thought, in a very angry way, into the middle of the circle, why must I suffer? And I got a sensation like a bolt of lightning to my head, and it carried the words, because you chose it. And that sort of like made me jolt inside, because like, that was weird, okay? And anyway, I tried to get back to sleep after that, but I felt this sensation on my shoulder and on my thigh, a bit like a warmth or a bubbly electric warmth. It was very strange. And I turned my head round, and there was this thing, this being, made up out of black and red sparkles standing over me. A humanoid shape, but the shape of a skeleton. Anatomically correct, down to the broken nose bone. And he gave off this atmosphere of warmth and wisdom. Now, what that means, I don't think we can say, apart from the fact that a very strange experience happened. Was the Angel of Death really there? Well, if he was, he's quite a nice guy, really. But on the other hand, it was weird.
Fantastic. When you're growing up as a child and you hear about the Angel of Death, who makes his appearance, if you will, during Moses' time, and they're talking about the Exodus from Israel and whatnot, and they're having this battle between Moses and the Egyptian hierophants or magicians at the time, and they seem to be duplicating each other's feats of magic or miracles or whatever, and they talk about the Angel of Death. It's funny, it was some years after those childhood lessons, which invariably happen, in the majority here in the States, alluding to that, many of us have somewhat of a Christian background. It wasn't really suggested in my mind till years later that the Angel of Death is actually a servant of God and not, a servant. And I'm not saying the Bible ever said that or any other. It's just that when you're a young kid, you think, oh, God, the Angel of Death, he must actually be like on the right-hand side of Satan somewhere in this fiery furnace. But it was actually suggested to me as a youth. I don't remember how or when or through who it was. It was a person, probably a pastor figure of some sorts. that suggested that this person works for God himself, if you subscribe to that pantheon and that deity in all of it. But anyway, I mentioned this point because you suggested that he seemed like a good guy, a good individual, and
Yeah.
he's just tasked with this. I mean, the angel of death. My God, really? I mean, children, babies, women, children, men. You know,
Hmm.
all of these things that we consider. And you know, I'm not trying to sound, you know, chauvinist or anything, but you know, traditionally in the Western mindset, we consider women and children to be, you know, susceptible or vulnerable in a certain. And it's just this guy eats them all up. He kills them all in this story. So I just wanted to bring that up, based off of your idea that you got the
Yeah.
idea that he was a good guy. And you know, another thing that's interesting about that is even though they are strange experiments or experiences that you have, or those of us that have these in what we would call a normal or paranormal nature, it would seem like the best word is to use is normal. If you look at it literally, like there could
Yeah.
quite literally not be anything such as paranormal. You know, quite
Well, the,
literally.
the, the word paranormal just means slightly odd, but possibly normal as well, or just slightly out of the realms of what you might consider to be the lowest common denominator of human thoughts, experiences, and emotion. Okay? But so, yeah, there can be paranormal or just slightly odd things. So the word paranormal just means slightly odd.
Mhm.
But as far as supernatural, that's just a very silly word. If anything happens in nature, it has to, by its very nature, be natural. All right, there's things we as a species have been finding out about the world within the past couple of hundred years that would, scare a primitive living 1,000 years ago to death. But the fact of the matter is, these are perfectly natural things. We have some command over electricity. There's you sitting wherever you are, and you can talk to me living in England, where just the same way as you would as if you were standing in the room with me. Okay, this is natural, this is normal to us, it's everyday experience. But on the other hand, to them, it would have been paranormal. Now, I live in hope that one day, maybe 500 years in the future, maybe some really broad-minded scientist will actually put to the test some more of this stuff, because it doesn't matter how many experiences you can have. You don't know anything. So what if I had that angel of death experience? Does it prove he exists? No. Does it prove that God exists? No. It was a very freaky experience, but there's no proof conclusive that he existed. All right? All we have is that wonderful, beautiful, bizarre, poetic, frightening, enlightening, weird experience. Okay? Was that paranormal? Yes. Was it natural? It has to be. Absolutely everything. If you share a dream with someone, that has to somehow be natural,
Mhm.
despite the fact that someone might not believe it, because something can be real whether you believe in it or not. And if you disbelieve in something, it can still be real or it might not. What you believe, that's bullshit, okay? It's just a belief. There's some people who believe who believe right now today that mankind has not set foot on the moon. They actually think that we haven't done this. To them, it's not real.
Mm.
Now, this is stupidity, but there are people who think like that. Just as there are people who would say, Nick, he thinks he's spoken to the angel of death. No, I think I've had a strange experience, okay? Or someone who will say, okay, he thinks he's had this strange experience, therefore you must be crazy. No, I've had this strange experience which has to be natural. Just because you don't believe in it or you don't accept it, that's your problem.
Mm.
The fact of the matter is, nature is weirder than the average human being can understand. All right? Even if you just watch the Discovery Channel about the things which live in our oceans, that stuff is pretty freaky. It's only been within the past, 20 years that we've discovered, the deep sea black smokers,
Right.
and the fact that life can live independent of the sun because it can take its energy source from volcanic activity, or indeed the chemical energy of some of the stuff which is spewed out by volcanic vents. All right? This is, there's so much more for humankind to discover. We will never fully understand all this stuff. There's too much to know. And in this like amazing, wonderful, weird, bizarre universe, how can you get bored of life? Because there's so much to know. My personal journey is along these particular, strange experiences and so on and so forth. For somebody else, it'll be working out the DNA sequence, whatever. Everyone has to approach the universe in different ways. And just please, dear Lord or whatever, one day, let us try and combine all these things, because there's something happening. There really is something going on there. And it boggles my mind, and we'll never understand it. And the people who say they do understand it, they're lying. Quite simply, they're just telling you pork pies, as we say in England. Pork pies meaning lies, Cockney rhyming slang, okay?
Got it.
So we need to start putting more rationality into this weird movement, which has got too many cult leaders, too many people turning around saying it works, or that ghosts are real, or whatever. We don't know whether ghosts are real. We know the experiences of ghosts are real, yes. All right, astral projection. Okay, I've had them. Does it mean to say that we can walk outside of the body? We don't know. All we know is we can have the experience of the astral projection, okay? That's real. The experience is, yeah, it's concrete, solid, real. I can have the experience. I've had the experience. What does it mean? I don't know. What about sharing dreams or dream telepathy? Well, that shows you something, but again, it makes us ask too many questions. But having these experiences, at least it shows you that there must be more to life than we as a species currently know, think, or believe. And that really excites me. It really does. And I'm not going to stop my quest no matter how many skeptical atheists have a go at me.
It's very well said what you stated, and also a very excellent title for your other book, Astral Projection, Sceptical Occultism, which, by the way, I need to mention the word skeptical in your title is spelt with a C, you had mentioned, yes?
That is correct. Also the word "and" between astral projection and skeptical occultism.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so astral projection and skeptical occultism, you can find it on Amazon.com, and the word skeptical for this title is SC instead of SK. One final thing that I want to talk to you about before we wrap up this show is the tarot cards themselves. Now, unbeknownst to you, before we did this show in our little chats and correspondences, I don't know how many people are actually aware, because I just don't think of every little detail in my life, but I actually have a vast collection of tarot cards myself. I collect them. I know a lot of people collect cars and airplanes and things like that, or whatever the case. I collect tarot cards. Now, I don't know anything about divination in any way whatsoever. The history being rather obscure, would you agree that the history of tarot cards very obscure? The origins of them, where did they come from?
No, it's not obscure at all.
No, not at all.
No. Tarot is a card game which is still played. No, it is. No point in laughing here. It's a straightforward fact. Tarot is a card game which is very similar to whist and rummy and bridge as well. It's a trick-based game. Okay, it was about 300 or so years ago that there was a bit of a change towards seeing tarot as being part of a occult school of thought. Then, of course, you get the writings of Alphonse Louis Constant, also known as Eliphas Levi, who directly connects the symbolism of the 13th century Jewish Kabbalah with the number sequences and the cards of the tarot. You got your 4 suits, you got your 10 pip cards, and how that connects and relates, and the 22 past and 22 major arcana cards. But that was him rather schizophrenically connecting a few ideas. And from that, we've now got this whole school of thought that tarot was quite so occult, when basically it's a combination of 2 separate traditions running side by side. Firstly, card-playing games, which originated out of China, because all card-based games, tile-based games, they all originated in China from the early gambling games, which were based upon using banknotes, basically, as the playing pieces, all right? Then that became cards, and then that started to move slowly into a 5-suit system, and all the various different religions started to put their symbolism upon it. So there was an ancient Greek one, which had all the gods of Olympus on what we now call the major arcana, the trump cards. Then, hey presto, tarot finally arrived in France, where it actually got the proper name tarot. And France at that time was Christian, and so they took the symbolism of what they call the triumph procession, which is a celebration of the victory of Jesus Christ over the devil and over paganism, and applied that to what we now call the major arcana. And so that's how we get the traditional symbolism that we see on the Tarot of Marseille and the Oswald Wirth Tarot, which is pretty similar. Then at that time, tarot started to become a bit naughty because essentially it was regarded as being blasphemous to use something straight out of a church as a tool of gambling. Okay, so some countries, I think it was Spain and Italy, decided to make tarot illegal. And that's basically when it started to develop this naughty sort of black or dark imagery. And also, after that time, it was then adopted by the various mystery traditions, which are essentially a form of New Age religion based on Judeo-Christian concepts from about 200 to 300 years ago, which became the real origin of what is now the New Age movements. That is why there is so much Jewish Kabbalah and Christianity in each and every single New Age and pagan religion which is out there at the moment. It's the power of tarot influencing how theology is accepted and understood. So the origin of tarot is not mysterious at all, okay? The symbolism of tarot, that's been made up only over the past couple of centuries. I mean, there's actual archaeological evidence of people using cards as fortune-telling devices going back 5.5 centuries from the ruins in ancient Germany, I think it was southern Germany. A booklet was found with a pack of cards, and the booklet explained what the cards meant, and the cards have hand-painted pictures of birds on them. And so there would be like a wren or a chaffinch and all the rest of that, and they would have different meanings. Let's say one would mean your lover, one would mean that you're amorous, one would mean that you're intelligent, and and so on and so forth. So these two traditions of just cartomancy, which is using cards for contemplation or divination, then met tarot, and the traveling people used tarot because they could get tarot cards more easily, probably, as their tool for divination as well. So that's how the mimetic understanding of tarot being a divination tool really got going.
That's fantastic. I suppose to a certain extent, I've been disillusioned happily with the idea that yes, we trace the origins of the cards back X amount of centuries, and essentially to the Tarot of Marseille, which I have a copy of this as well. I collect them, but I don't really collect them for the divination or whatever. I've really been edified in a certain way and uplifted under the illusion that there is a symbolic meaning, that they're worth contemplating on, and whether or not there might be some mystical symbols related to Rosicrucianism or the Knights Templar hidden along the way makes it all the more fun.
Wait a second there. Who? Let me ask you a question very quickly. What religion were the Rosicrucians?
Well, that's a good question. It's
simple. It's very simple.
Yeah, it's obviously a highly Christianized.
That's right.
Form of secret society. Yes.
No. It wasn't that secret. It was a Christian denomination. And the Knights Templars, what religion were they?
Also Christian.
Right. Okay. So essentially, they were Christian. But did they have an influence on the tarot? I strongly doubt it. But the main influence on tarot is Christianity, full stop. So is there a hidden spiritual meaning there? Yeah, there's the same hidden spiritual meaning that's been going on for centuries, thanks to Judaism and Christianity. Mm-hmm. But it's mainly Christianized. I mean, the High Priestess card, I think it's the High Priestess when you got the figure with the 12 stars around her head,
right,
and over the moon. That's the Queen of Heaven, or the Queen in Revelations, which is a depiction of Mary, the mother of Jesus.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's all very interesting. I think there's the account of Eliphas Levi and also Arthur Waite, talking about the Knights Templar going to the Arab lands on their crusades, coming across these highly Abrahamic traditions of occult, in which actually, at least in my opinion of studies of Western occult has been by and large based off of almost entirely on philosophical renditions based from the Arab world is not related to the tarot, but that question, do you feel that it seems to be by and large, minus the Nordic traditions or anything from that area, but by and large Western occultism is just a complete mock-up or a transatlantic bring over of occult knowledge that's just purely Abrahamic or Arabian in origin?
Well, Arabian would also mean Abrahamic because essentially they got Islam out there.
Right, absolutely.
But essentially, all of the methodology of every form of spirit summoning has been done by people in each and every single culture in very slightly different ways, but very similar ways for all time. So it's all the same thing, whether you say, oh my God, this all comes out of Judeo-Christian thought, or oh my God, it all comes out of Islamic thought, or whatever. It doesn't matter because it's just the same thing being done in slightly different ways, or being looked at through the lens of very slightly different theological perspectives. I would say that in the Western world, that means the United States, United Kingdom, Europe, Australia, it is in fact more Christian thinking. I mean, sometimes the modern pagan religions try and separate themselves from Christian thinking through using LaVeyan thinking and saying this is the way in which we start being a vaguely Christian religion. Well, basically, no, that's not the case because Satanism comes out of Christianity. But it chooses to go against some of the apparent dogma. But the only reason that there's so much hard dogma in Christianity is because there's hard dogmatic people who are trying to sell it. And most of the hard dogma in Christianity isn't actually anything to do with the words of Jesus Christ himself. It's just overlays based upon the writings of Paul, who spends some time being very nice and some time being a sexist, bigoted wanker, you know.
Right.
But essentially, it's a form of the better aspects of the pagan, New Age, occult, and spiritualistic world is essentially just Christianity, but it's made slightly more accessible to people who have an issue with some forms of Christian speech or thought or imagery as a result of a few bad experiences. So it's still a good thing.
Right.
And if I meet someone who's a Wiccan, then essentially they don't know it yet, but they probably are very Christian. I mean, the five-pointed star upright is used in some traditions to mean Jesus is ascension into heaven. The five-pointed star reversed does not mean the devil in some mystery traditions. It speaks about Jesus' birth and the divine entering into the world, descending from heaven. That's why there's a point pointing downwards. And the reason that the inverted pentagram was used in Freemasonry or some forms of Freemasonic schools of thought for the first degree initiation, just as it is in the first degree of Wicca, is because it's speaking about the start, the birth.
Have you found great value in the tarot cards as a form of therapy, as a form of does it has a useful function after 500 years approximately of group meaning assigned to it? Like you can give somebody a four-leaf clover and, to maybe someone in South America, it means nothing. You give it to somebody in the West, they're like, oh, thank God for this, because it's lucky. We've assigned it a certain value and meaning, and thereby it assumes in its own vibrant, energetic, quantum way a certain amount of power. Do you feel like the tarot cards are useful in that sort of thinking?
Yes, of course. It's artwork. If I've got a pack of tarot cards in my pocket, I've got like an art gallery. And if you don't get, spiritually uplifted by a piece of artwork, then essentially there's something wrong with you. You know what I mean? I mean, I've got the Crowley Thoth Tarot in my hand at the moment, and the imagery is beautiful.
Yeah, it truly is. Yeah, it truly is. It's fantastic stuff, and I'm glad that you kind of took us through the history there. I've spent probably too much time reading the late 1800s and early 1900s, very in vogue form of occult literature when you realize that the Western world is really embracing these ideas to in the post imperial world of Catholicism or Christendom, as it were, and they're embracing the seances all the way up to Kennedy or Madame Blavatsky, or not Kennedy, I'm sorry, Mrs. Lincoln Kennedy. I don't know. You got to talk about him sometime, but Mrs. Lincoln, Madame Blavatsky, all part of this time period where the stage magician was slowly coalescing with occultism and all sorts of things of that nature. And that's by and large where I got a lot of this information from. I am aware, though, that historically, though, it did become very popular in France, where you can Wikipedia the rules on how to play tarot if you're so interested, which I am not. But as far as far as the various renditions of artwork, there is something in my mind that I know consciously I'm ascribing great meaning to. Now, like I said, I don't know much about divination, but I go through them, I collect them in various versions, and I look at them, and like I said before, there's something very edifying, it really seems to resonate with me. It could have been anything, it could have been runes, not so much, it could have been tea leaves or something, but for me, there is something here, and whether or not it's that quantum entanglement where we're sharing dreams, or the 5 centuries of human thought ascribing meaning to God, Jesus, Muhammad, tarot, 4-leaf clovers, horseshoes, what have you, I think that there might be a lot of validity to that, because I feel like there's something there. And I also took with me what a wonderful tool they are. Like you said, you have an art gallery, but you could take a tarot set anywhere, and if human beings could no longer speak to each other, like we both speak English, but let's say we go to Greece, where I don't know a bit of Greek at all, I could probably convey some ideas using pictures, which is what I would be doing with my hands and my body. Where is the restroom? Where is the taxi? If I can't get these words across, I'm going to start assuming a very pictograph way of communicating with another person. And I feel very strongly that the tarot is useful for that, whether or not that statement is true or false. Nevertheless, I'm going to stick by that one.
Well, funnily enough, there is an interesting part of tarot history, which I don't know quite how true it is, but it is rumored that the messengers in the old days, communicating between the various different, rulers between one kingdom and another, they would carry a pack of tarot cards in case they lost their voice. And so essentially, if they needed to convey a message, a political message, they might use the tarot cards to represent the queen of this particular kingdom or the king of this particular kingdom getting together, and using a combination of the trump cards and the court cards to explain a story, so that the person, the other person could understand it if they happen to have, let's say, a bad cold and lost their voice.
That makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad you pointed that up, because I didn't know that to be a fact, but it did seem to make sense in a certain logical way, that if you weren't going to be able to communicate with somebody, that you were going to use sign language or body language in an extreme form to get your point across. So there's definitely, in my opinion, a lot of mystery there. I'm mostly fond of the major arcana itself. I care personally in my own studies, not so much for the lesser cards, if you will, but I feel like there's a lot there's a lot to pick up from that. But anyway, what a fantastic discussion. For those of you that are listening and tuning in, our guest tonight was NickDutch, professional tarot reader, author of TransDeism and Divination, and Astral Projection and Sceptical Occultism. You can find it on Amazon.com. I'll go ahead and post links below this video. You can visit Mr. Dutch's website at nickdutch.co.uk. That's nickdutch.co.uk, and his YouTube channels Nick Dutch Tarot and Bespoke Group UK. That's BESPOKE Group UK. Both YouTube channels. Fascinating. Subscribe. Get involved in this conversation. Nick, it's been an excellent show, and I'm very thankful that you're here to give us your insight on these things. And you've been doing this for quite some time, and I very much appreciate your knowledge in this regard. Thank you.
No, the pleasure's all mine. I'd just like to say thank you to yourself, to Indigo Children Radio, and also thank you to everyone who's listening.
Thank you so much, folks, and once again, stay tuned and visit those links and look forward to having another excellent show. My best to all, and everybody, happy holiday wishes.